Recording is on.
Good morning and welcome to our webinar. Today, the Vertical Present series is going to be talking about demystifying cloud communications, how to choose the right cloud provider. I'm Kevin Butler, your VP of Product and Marketing here at Vertical Communications, and I'll be taking you through this webinar today. To start off, we really do want your interaction, and so we want to make sure that people know how to interact. If you have questions, thoughts that you want to bring up as we're going along, all you have to do in the interface is mouse over the bottom bar. It will pop up with a control bar. You'll see that there's a meeting and chat button right in the middle there, which you can click on to bring up the chat pane on the left-hand side and just type in your question or your comment there. We'll have a discussion period at the end where we'll make sure and go through all of those. We really want to hear back from you. So please do add in your questions, your comments in there as we go along, and we'll make sure and we address them. So to start out, the point of this discussion today is that you've already decided you want a new cloud communication system. It might be for any of these reasons. You might have some other reasons. One of the things that you might put in that chat bar is if you have different reasons other than some of the ones we've listed up here, please go ahead and add them. I'd love to discuss a little bit about what those reasons are. If you haven't actually made this decision, I'd suggest that one of the things you might want to do, and you'll hear me make this suggestion a lot, is go to vertical.com, and under resources on the toolbar, we have our whole line of webinars we've done. One of them is a cloud versus premise webinar. We also have a detailed blog article you can get into if you really haven't made that choice of on-site versus cloud, or even possibly a hybrid solution. We want to make sure you've looked at all the options. But the assumption for this webinar here today is you've made that choice already. You're going to go to cloud. But now the decision is which cloud, and there's a lot of different products out there. This is just a few of the leading products out there. There are so many. How do you choose which one? Well, we're going to take you behind the curtain a little bit on cloud and try and give you tools so that you can understand which one to choose, what's going to fit you best, and take you through a whole process. And hopefully you'll be better equipped to make that choice come the end of this webinar. Now, the first impulse most people have to do is, of course, the first impulse we always do is let's just jump on the internet, search, and find a bunch of information about it. And that's a good impulse, but there are some things to consider. There are some issues there that you have to think about. So the very first thing to consider is that you have to think about the motivation of every source you're looking at. You might be looking at articles on the topic of unified communications. You might be looking at who's getting the most awards. You might see reviews that people have done. You might see rating systems, or you might see webinars like this one. And the key thing you've got to understand is what is the motivation behind each of these? And I'm going to go ahead and tell you the answer to 99% of them, which is marketing dollars is what drives most of this content. People are doing this because they want you to buy their product. And almost everything you see out there, whether it be from an independent third party, I am doing air quotes with my fingers right now, to various different articles, educational materials, all of that is driven by marketing dollars, getting you to buy. That is absolutely what's happening over and over again. So you have to take that into mind. That doesn't mean there can't be useful information. But it does mean that all the information that you're looking at has a marketing spend to it. And even the most independent organizations really still have almost always an organization that is taking marketing dollars. They may try and keep their editorial separate, but the two are going to bleed over to each other. So you have to take a little bit of a cynical eye to all of this stuff and understand that somewhere somebody is probably paying for the opinion that you're seeing. So having said that, since I'm doing an educational webinar on the internet, what's Vertical's motivation in doing all of these? Let's be cynical about this and make sure you understand what the heck we're doing so we can be upfront. Well, we want to be your trusted advisor for decades to come. I don't just want to sell you something. Totally want to do that. No doubt about it. Want to be the people who sell you something, but I want to be the people that you keep coming back to for years and years and years. I don't just want one sale. Vertical's corporate history goes back decades, and we keep customers for those long extended time periods. And so we do that by starting out the process of providing the best educational materials possible to you, providing the best information you can possibly get. And we deliver that great advice with the concept that it's going to help us long term. Basically, our premise is this. If you come to trust us and come to realize that we provide good advice, then first, you're going to buy from us in the first place. And that's one of the things we want. But second, the next time you buy, when we just advise you, hey, get this, we'll have a faster time to close the deal. It won't take as long to do work, and that will result in a lower cost of sale. There's a real educational motivation for us here, motivated by dollars. So this is the reason why we're doing these. And part of it is to make sure that when you go off and independently try and verify some of the stuff we say, then it all turns out to be true, because there's no faster way to ruin a relationship, especially at the beginning, by not telling you the information that you really need and making sure that it is reliable and verifiable. So you have to think about the motivation of every source. You have to look at it. You understand the motivation that Vertical has here. But the next thing you might ask about is, well, what about crowdsourced reviews? You know, there's a lot of review sites. I can see those. And these can have some real value to you. But there is an edge case problem here. That problem is that most people who post on review sites either had an incredibly positive experience, or they had a terrible experience with the product. You rarely get the majority, which is the informed middle ground that's going to tell you this was good, this was bad. That's not what you get in reviews. You get the people who had a catastrophic failure. You get the people who had the greatest experience ever. And that makes it a little hard to tell how good or bad a product really is. On a scale of 1 to 5, you get lots of 1s, lots of 5s. You get very few 3s. And this doesn't even take into account those marketing dollars I talked about before. You have what's called astroturfing, which is, building a grassroots, once again, those air quotes, capability where people are saying, hey, I want to be involved. I want to tell you all about this. But really what they're doing is, I just got paid to post a review. This can be particularly bad on consumer products, but it certainly shows up in our field for business products as well, and something that you have to look at and be aware of. So there's some problems here. You can take these, but take them with a grain of salt, because you're going to see the best and the worst, and then you're going to see a lot of people who are paid to provide answers. Sometimes it's not just the good reviews that are paid for. People will often be paid to go put bad reviews on competitor sites as well. And so this is something you have to think about and consider. Another just nature of the product, one of the reasons why you may be buying cloud is because you want the latest technology. Cloud solutions move very fast. Their product updates monthly. Their product packaging and pricing can change constantly as they try and respond to the marketplace in a faster mode. The problem with this is almost any article written about them, even if it is written in an independent, neutral fashion, could be out of date by the time you read it. If you see something that's a year old, it's certainly out of date. And that makes it very, very hard to find current resources to look at. So what we're going to try and do throughout the rest of this is we're going to talk about what methodologies you can do. And along the way, I'm going to try and point out resources that may fall outside some of these problems that you can use independently of listening to me to be able to verify what products to choose. You'll also notice that at no time in this am I going to recommend a specific product. We certainly have opinions on it. And if you want to engage with us, we'll talk to you about what we think the right product is for you once we know more about you. But that's not what this entire webinar is about. This is about giving you the better tools so that you can make the best choice. So let's talk about the way most people start out, which is just, hey, look, here are the features and here's the price, and I want the cheapest price and I want the best features, and they combine that. And you can do that. Let's talk about how you can do that more efficiently and effectively, just to start out with that. First, you can check websites for a ballpark price. One of the good things about, cloud services is most of them have bowed to the pressure of what the audience wants, and they put out their prices on their website. But one of the things to understand is those prices are never a complete list of all of the things they have in their inventory. And they certainly don't account for making sure that they fit what your company actually needs. And so I would strongly engage that you engage with a reseller who's going to do discovery work with you. And we'll talk a little more about this and figure out what you really need to get you a detailed quote. Just going by what you see on the website may be a way to do an early comparison, but it won't give you the best pricing that either takes into account your specific needs or even takes into account options that don't show up on the website that you may qualify for and may work for you. So those are all things to consider and look into. It's important to consider all of them. So the next thing that we want to talk about, one quick note. If you get somebody who you engage with as a reseller and they go directly to say, oh, how many seats do you need? Here's a quote. Here, I can give you quotes for 5 different products. I would run away quickly. That is not what you need. That's not how to engage in this. doing a telecommunications sale is not buying a very simple piece of software. There's a lot of very complex things going on in your communications needs. You need somebody who's actually going to go through those details and figure out what you want. I would run away really fast if they just immediately throw numbers at you the first time you call them. That's going to have problems. An additional thing that you want to do, and if any of my sales team is on the call, they're going to hate me for saying this, but I want to give you the best advice, is you should make sure and ask for an estimate of the taxes and fees involved, because you're not just going to be buying something on a per seat monthly basis. There are going to be taxes involved because telecommunications has a lot of taxes and they're very different. One of my favorite things to know is that I live here in Colorado, and down in Denver, there is literally a place in the middle of the city where the telecommunications taxation district is different in a small multi-block neighborhood as opposed to the rest of the city because of the way the different governmental boundaries lie. Nobody can keep track of it, so it really has to be very, very specific to where your locations are, where you're going to be using the services, and that means you can see different taxes and fees, and the fees can certainly be wildly different from provider to provider. This is a big deal because you can see that in some extreme cases, they can be 30 to 45% of the total price, depending upon where you're located and what taxation area you're in. They will certainly be something like 20% or more of your total price. And so this really makes a big difference. You need to make sure and get that estimate of taxes and fees, even if it takes longer and is more work for my team, which it is. And make sure that once you start comparing different services and looking at the different pieces that are involved, that you compare apples to apples and you don't go, oh, okay, apples to oranges. One of the most common ways that people do this is they try an equivalent price. They say, oh, this seat costs this much and this seat costs this much. They must be the same thing. Often they are not. The feature differential can make those very different. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the feature side of things to say, oh, this is the same as this. The pricing, it could be wildly different on those. It needs to be feature parity, not price parity that you're comparing on. So having said that, let's talk about the feature side of this equation. Now, the first thing I'll tell you is that there are standard features that should be available from any product at this point. You should be able to get a desktop app and a mobile app, and they should both have soft phones so that you can use your cell phone, you can use your computer as a phone. In addition, you ought to be able to use a physical desk phone as well. All of those are standard. There should be unlimited US calling. At this point, if you've got somebody who's still billing you for calling in the United States, don't choose those people. They're completely out of date. They should all have standard call flow elements. These are things like being able to have a call ring multiple extensions, being able to have a call come in and hit an auto attendant that plays options, being able to do advanced voicemail. All of those should be standard at this point. You shouldn't find a solution that doesn't have all of those things in there. I will make a caveat on that. Microsoft Teams has a lot of great other things going for it. It's really good in chat and collaboration. You can bring in documents. It's not great at being the phone system part of a communication solution. And there are elements of these call flow items that it just doesn't have. Now, we have some solutions for that. And in fact, we have a whole separate webinar on that very topic. Like I told you, I'll be referring back to all of our other content quite a bit because we have a lot you can look at. So if you're interested in Microsoft Teams, we can fix some of the problems in Teams and make it really work for you as a single solution. But you need to be aware of that. Some of the other standard features, of course, video and conferencing. Everybody's doing meetings like this all the time now, right? So you need to make sure that that's just built in and part of it. That should be a standard piece of the solution. You also should have call recording built in. A call recording should just be a standard part of the product. Now, having said that, the difference here on call recording becomes storage. How long can I keep the files online? This might be by time. This might be total, value of storage. There's differences there, but everybody should have call recording just as a standard thing and not a thing you need to buy extra. And of course, chat. So chat, be within the company, being able to talk, being able to create rooms and collaborate that way. This should all just be standard in any product as well. What might not be standard is talking to external people with SMS. And so being able to talk to any of your external customers with them texting you on their cell phones. That's something that's a really powerful feature for many organizations, but is almost always an add-on, but is something to ask about, certainly. And then voicemail to email. At this point, if you don't have the ability to do voicemail to email, and more specifically, voicemail to text, so that you can read the voicemail and not necessarily have to listen to it. That should just be standard as well. And almost every one of the market-leading products has these features. So a lot of these things, you want to check on to make sure they have them, because they don't have these, I would be a little concerned about the product. But this should be just your bread and butter features. Well, what about everything else? I'm not going to spend a bunch of time going through a bunch of other features, because it really depends on what you need. It's unique to the specific features that you need yourselves. And for every customer, that can be kind of different. What I found is every customer needs 10% of the features that a product has, but it's almost always a different 10%. So what you really need is a communications expert. You need somebody like Vertical, right? That's what I'm selling here, to help discover what your use cases are. And I'm going to give you two different options. You can get somebody like us, a value-added reseller who adds our expert knowledge and ability and expertise into the resale process, who can advise you on what the right thing is to get. Or another way is to get an independent consultant who sells their expertise, and you'll have to pay for them to come in and provide you support for your purchase process. But they can do a really good deal, especially if you're a larger organization, in setting up a bid process for you, giving you expertise on what you should be looking for. If you need, something like that, feel free to reach out to us as well. We're a member of what's called the Society of Communications Technology Consultants, which is an independent organization. We're just a vendor member. We provide support to them. But they're a great group of consultants who have a really strong code of ethics about making sure to take care of the client. And they don't sell products like we do. They're just there to be an independent consultant. So that's something that's another option for you. But definitely get somebody, because you don't need to be an expert on all of this stuff. You need somebody to be the expert for you. And that's really a key portion of this. And if they're a good expert, what they're going to do is they're going to start with a blank page. They may find out all about what you've got as an existing thing, but when they build the system, they're going to go from the ground up and create new pieces. We talked about this last month in our webinar about starting from the ground up and coming up with your imagination of what you would like, what would be available for your customers, rather than just replicating what you've already got. Another thing we did talk about last month, but is also important when talking about features, is feature silos. It's possible to get all of these different capabilities. Maybe I do Zoom for video, and then for chat, I'm going to use Teams, and then I need a voice solution. And that's what's called a best of breed methodology, where you have a best application for each feature. But there is a problem with this modality, and we're not a big fans of it here at Vertical, in that when you do this, all of your information is siloed, as we just saw. It's separated into its own set. You can't search across all of these pieces. You certainly can't transition communications from one to another. None of that really works. So that becomes a problem for you. We generally recommend to look for solutions that are a single best of breed platform solution, where you can get your phone, your video, your text and chat, your contact center, all this stuff all on a single platform. That's what truly unified communications is. And when you do that, you can then see the single customer experience across multiple different modes of communication, move between them easily, have one platform for people to work for. It's just a better experience. And so this is something we strongly recommend to look for and to choose when you're thinking about what features do I need. I want them all in one. I don't want them from 4 or 5 different platforms. Never mind from a billing perspective. Now you have 4 or 5 different bills to try and work through. What about phones? If we're talking about a communication solution, these can still be relevant. Do your users actually need one, though? If you have users who are dedicated to being on the phone all day, who are talking voice all day to customers, then I would highly recommend still having an instrument on their desk. Most of the reason is this thing is a single purpose, dedicated, I'm going to provide high quality without a lot of chance for interference device. And that's what you want for somebody whose job is mostly on the phone. If they're mostly mobile, you can look at a mobile app. And if they're just occasional phone users, they might just get away with having the desktop app instead. And that's fine. The great part about this is you should be able to mix and match all of these things and put them together. That should be part of how you operate. You shouldn't just be going, oh, I've got 200 users, so let's get 200 phones. You should be thinking about what each user does or does not need. And I'll go ahead and provide you an important caveat right now. Just like so many other parts of the industry, Phones can be a little hard to come by right now. We have inventory problems out there that all manufacturers are dealing with because of the common issues that are causing everybody else to have issues. I just finally got a new oven in my house. It took 8.5 months to get it. You certainly, if you're not looking for a new communication solution, want to wait 8.5 months just to get the phones. So the options on the right can be a good way to get things going and then put in phones if the models you're looking for are in short supply. Now, the other thing that I would suggest here is how do you get a better handle on the features you need? You certainly want that communications expert. You want somebody doing discovery with you. But really, in the end, you've got to test it for yourself. You've got to be the one who looks at it and figures out, does this work? And there's several different ways you can do this. These are the best resources that I can find for you is just to do a testing of the system. There isn't really a comparison list that you can put out there. I've seen several on the internet that says, oh, hey, here's this provider and this provider and this provider. Here's their features. But remember, cloud solutions move fast. So those lists are often out of date very, very quickly, and they aren't current because it's so hard to keep up with what's going on. So what I would suggest is get an in-depth expert demo. Here at Vertical, we have done demos for customers that last more than a day. The longest one I've personally done myself is 6 hours straight. That was an extreme situation. I'm not necessarily saying you want a 6-hour demo, but you really do want to get an expert to show you all the things that you really need. So discover what you need, then do that expert demo. If you really want to get even deeper, you can talk to your vendor about a demo account and get, 1 or 2 seats where you can really use and get hands-on. If you're an IT person, the technical background, that's probably what you really want anyway. You don't trust anything that people say. You want to sit there and poke at it yourself. And then if you have a larger organization, you might want to set up a proof of concept where for example, we do a lot of work with large retail organizations. And what we'll normally do is set up a lab environment that replicates one of their stores so that they can really see how it works and go through all of that. And that may be something that you want to do is to set up a true proof of concept where you can see all the pieces, set up call flow, work through how the administration works. All of these are really good ways to understand the actual resources. Now, I wouldn't do this with everybody that you're looking at, but I would narrow it down to maybe just a couple, and one of your final tests would be this tested out phase. So now we've seen how we can make the standard method of just looking at price and features a little more detailed. We can really get into it more. And you've seen how you can find some resources to help you out and look at those. But there's a lot more that you should be looking at, in my opinion, more than just price and features. There's some key things that will really make the difference for you. The very first one is reliability of the product. You need a product that has all these things here, and we'll go through all of them, to be able to make sure that that product is reliable as this Central Park horse who's there every day, 24/7, taking tourists all around the park. You want to be that reliable. The first thing to look at is the architecture. One of the first things I talk about with the architecture is how do upgrades work? How do you get new software? We keep talking about how cloud moves fast, right? Well, how does that upgrade happen? Is it seamless? Is it so that you don't even notice it? Is it so that end users may at most have to log off and log back on to get the new update? Is there no downtime? Is there no time at all that you're going to be required to say, oh, the system's not working? One of the real common ways that I've seen this be gotten around of is people say, oh, there's no downtime. Well, we have maintenance windows, on Monday night from 2 to 4 a.m. That's the kind of thing you need to look at, especially if the vendor is offering what's called a service level agreement. You need to look into the fine print to make sure that they're not accepting, oh, we could do a 4-hour outage and that's not part of the service level because we did it for an upgrade. You need a system that is designed and architected from the beginning to be completely seamless. And when they do have problems, it needs to be easy to roll back so that when you have an issue and the issue is the new software, that they just click a button and all of a sudden you're back on the old software, once again, as seamlessly as possible. This isn't anything special. This is just how it should work. And when you get a vendor where it doesn't work like this, once again, run away fast and go find another one. You don't need them to have to pull the boat into dry dock and go rebuild it to go ahead and do the upgrade. That is the dated way to do this, and a cloud solution should not work that way at all. The reason it shouldn't do that is because its architecture should look something like this. This is sort of the ideal architecture with redundant elements for every single part of the network and every single part of the application and all the data. And all of it should fail over seamlessly. You should never have to know any of this is going on. If one of these servers goes down, it should just continue to work in the background. That's, once again, not only seamless upgrades, but seamless operation. If they lose part of their switching network, it should still work for you. That should not be a problem. You should still be able to operate. And all of the data should be held on redundant database clusters so that you don't have to worry about losing information as well. This is bread and butter. If you cannot see this kind of architecture in what the solution they're providing, then you should not choose it. Now, if you're not a highly technical person and you look at this and it's just like, okay, I don't even understand this, this is once again where somebody like Vertical can be very helpful, because we have entire teams of people who just do this, and they will be at your disposal to identify and say, yes, this solution, no, that solution. Remember our motivation here. We want to be the partner you choose to work with for 20 years. As an example, CVS Pharmacy, all 10,000 of their store locations, been a customer of ours for 17 years. And we want it to be for another 20 or 30 years, at least until I'm retired. To do that, we have to always be the trusted advisor with them. And that's why we're going to give you the best advice on, does this architecture work or not for any product out there. And we'll go through that with you. Now, beyond just all of that working in the data center and having this fully redundant architecture, you want a geo-redundant architecture. You want a location in data center 1, a location in data center 2 is the absolute minimum you want here. But what you don't want, and I make this point because I have literally had a vendor tell me this, is that their geo-redundancy is 12 blocks away from each other, both in New York City. That's not geo-redundancy. So you want to make sure and dig in and see what they've got. The ideal circumstance is something like this, where there are multiple locations around the world that are all serving out the capabilities, and you can be able to have support and service from all of them. Now, there are a few questions you should ask about geo-redundancy to make sure you're getting the right thing. How fast does it fail over from geo-redundant location to geo-redundant location? This may not be completely seamless. This may take a few seconds, and you have to accept that. Because of the fact that you're talking about moving all of your traffic from location to location. There may be a bit of a delay here, but it's in seconds. It's not minutes. It's certainly not hours. Do all the applications fail over? So not just, hey, will my voice continue to work, but will my video, will my chat, will a fax or contact center, what isn't covered is one of those key questions to ask. Do I have to do anything? Is this something where I have to flip a switch or authorize or make a change or notice? Or is this all just being handled in the background? And finally, does it cost extra to do the geo-redundancy? Do I have to pay something? By the way, the real answers to these questions should be, it fails over almost instantly. All the applications do fail over. I don't have to do anything, and it costs me nothing extra. It's just part of the service. That's what you should be looking for. But in addition to geo-redundancy, where you've got physical separation, we now talk a lot about multi-cloud, and this is a very good thing to look for from an architecture perspective as well. Here's a different vendor's approach to their architecture, where they're focused on the fact that they have both Google Cloud as well as Amazon Web Services up and serving all of their operations, and they're redundantly failing over between the various pieces and parts. And this is important. Now, a real quick thing I want to make a point about this is it's not multi-cloud if you don't have the same applications on one system as you're running on the other. If different stuff runs on Amazon than runs on Google, and you can't fail over between them, it's not really multi-cloud. That's just using two different clouds for different purposes, and it doesn't give you the redundancy factor. They've got to have the ability to run, for example, in this case, voice on one and voice on the other. If they're running voice on one, but the chat runs on the other, but the chat can't run on the first one, it's not multi-cloud and it's not valuable to you. So why is this important? Well, now you've made the underlying platform vendors not matter. You don't care if it's Google or if it's Microsoft or Oracle or Amazon. They just don't matter as long as you've got multiple of them and they're different. Because no one at all is too big to fail in the technical world. We just had a massive failure this morning of some of the biggest sites in the world due to what's called their content distribution network. And tons of people were not able to access leading sites all over the place. So no one at all is too big to fail. I don't care if your name is Amazon or if your name is Google, you can have an outage. And a multi-cloud solution makes you agnostic to those failures because you have a solution that encompasses multiple different platforms. And so it would take a multi-platform outage to really take you down at that point. This is the classic mode of not putting all your eggs in one basket. But all of this infrastructure and the pieces and parts are great, but it doesn't matter if there's nobody to watch it. You need to have active monitoring go on. There needs to be active monitoring and, very importantly, remediation capabilities, the way to fix stuff, right? You've got to have both of these. So what you should be looking for is a solution that not just has a network operations team. Really, they need to have network operation teams. They should be multiple teams around the world in a follow the sun configuration. So there's always people who are up and operational 24/7, watching everything going on. And those people have to have access to data on all of the systems and all the communications going on. They should be able to see all of the components on all their solutions across all of their clouds and data centers. And they need to be able to see all of the transport that's happening between those. They need to be able to see visibly all the way back to you on your individual phone or you using your computer for a video call. They've got to see the quality of all of that happening, and they need to be able to see the problems. So you need to ask about what are their network operations teams like? How many are there? Where are they located? And what do they do? And what data do they have access to? By the way, a little side question is, can I have access to that data too? That's a nice to have. But most importantly, they have to have the ability to fix the problem. I have talked to people before, like, oh, we have this knock and they do all this and all this. And I'm like, okay, what remediation steps can they take when there are problems? And it gets really quiet because there's not a lot they can do necessarily. So they ought to be able to fail over to other parts of the cloud. They ought to be able to do other things along those lines. Okay, somebody has just kicked on their microphone.
Not really. Well, there's a bit of barbecue sauce, but.
Hold on a second. And they're doing dishes.
The breadcrumbs give it a really good flavor. If it wasn't for the breadcrumbs, it would not taste good because it would just taste like no flavor. Like.
Sorry about that, folks. So as I was saying, you need to have the ability to fix problems. You need to be able to switch traffic to a different data provider or switch traffic to a different phone provider for voice. You need to be able to automatically roll back upgrades, as we talked about a minute ago. We need to be able to reroute traffic around problems. Ideally, this network operations center should be getting reports from all of their devices. And if they're one of the leading vendors, that should be millions of devices around the world. They should have access and visibility into all of those, and that means they should be able to see problems developing on the internet. And if AT&T has an issue, reroute around AT&T. They also need to be able to fail over within their own infrastructure, see problems happening, and get all of that. This absolutely needs to happen. This is the value of cloud, because you're not going to be able to do all of this stuff. You need them to be able to do it. At the same time, they need to tell you about what they're doing. Visibility is a key portion of this. They need to be able to give you real-time notification that problems are occurring. They need to be able to give you progress reports of what they're doing to fix it. They're going to need to tell you when it's done. So if you're still having problems and they say it's fixed, you can get involved and say, wait a second, hold on, we're still having problems. You need to know when they think it's fixed and then verify that it's fixed on your end. And then you need to get root cause analysis from them. You need them to tell you, here's why this happened and what we're going to do to fix it. The main reason you need that is that provides accountability and makes sure that they are doing things to fix it in the future. So you absolutely need to go through and make sure that all of these are available for the vendor, and how do they provide them. So all of this should provide you comfort in that the service will be there when you need it, that you have it. You're giving up some control by going to a cloud solution. These are the kinds of things that will make sure that you can feel comfortable the service is going to be there. But I keep on talking about resources. And so instead of giving you a review of the various reliability of different resources, I'm going to instead suggest going to a completely adjacent site that has no sort of vested interest in this. They have different vested interests. And that is downdetector.com. And downdetector basically is focused on monitoring all the other sites, taking reports from people that there are issues, evaluating it and providing the information. They have a big job today because, of course, we had this big network outage that I talked about earlier due to a content distribution network going down that took down some of the biggest sites out there. But you can just go to downdetector.com, and in that box, you can put in any of the services you're thinking about buying. it will come up, and then you can go choose the outage history and look back and see what, across the months, where their outages really are. So now you're seeing a macro view of reliability. You're not getting into all the parts and pieces that they promise, but you can see results that look a little something like this. These are 12-month rolling from March to March 20 to 21 of various leading services, and you can see where the problems tend to lie and who's having more issues. So Down Detector is a great place. There's a number of other sites that do this. I think Down Detector is my favorite to do, but you can go to Uptime and Pingdom and all sorts of different things to see some of these. But this gives you information on what realistically is happening as far as reliability for all of these different sites. Now, another key thing that I suggest you look at is roadmap. You really want to know where they're going. And this tells you something, not just about the product, but it tells you what direction they're going to go in the future. So it's telling you what the priorities of the vendor are, what they care about. And then you can match it up. Is that what I care about? Are they doing things that are going to help me in the future? Or are they off focused on other things? And then it also will tell you, because you can look at roadmap and see, do they deliver on these roadmap items? You can begin to get an idea of how responsible they are in actually delivering on their roadmap. Now, one way to do this is you can ask them for a roadmap update, and they may have something they can send to you, a recording or something like that. If you're a really large organization, you can try and push for somebody from their product team to come in and do a real live roadmap update. But I'm going to bet you're not going to get it. You might get the recording piece, but the problem is, remember, cloud moves fast. How many times have I said that? And this poses a real problem in that the roadmap is changing, adopting, and morphing over time. And so getting them to sit down and give you the current state of the roadmap is something that's very difficult. And if you get something that they do, once a quarter or something like that, that may not be as accurate as you would want because cloud moves fast. So let me give you another way to look at this. Here's my resource for dealing with cloud roadmaps instead. You can judge their future by actually looking backwards at their roadmap and seeing what they've actually done. So what I mean by this is go investigate their past releases. Go to, search engine, put in 8x8 work release notes. If you want 8x8, put in Mitel, Ring Central, whoever, and then find where they've got their what's new or their release notes. And here happens to be 8x8s. And you'll note that there's a link that I've highlighted for previous releases. So I click on that previous releases, and now I can go back through their previous releases, and I can see when they were released, so I can find out how often they're releasing and what their cadence is historically. And I can also see what the feature set involved is and what features they're getting into. And this makes it particularly useful to be able to get an idea of what they're doing and how often they're releasing and what direction they're heading. Because by looking at the features they've added, the updates they've put in, and all of those capabilities, you'll begin to understand, these are their priorities. They can say what they want about their priorities, but here's the software updates they're doing. If it's something like Contact Center, you can find those updates as well the same way. You just want to look into what they're doing and see this. And then the other part about this is you can go look at press releases and product announcements and compare the dates for those. And now you can judge, here's what they're saying they're going to do back in the past, and here's what they did, so you get an idea of how well they actually deliver and how often when they say, we're going to do this, it's just marketing speak that never gets resolved. By the way, I'm hitting on marketing a lot. Remember, I am VP of marketing here at Vertical, but we have a tendency sometimes to be more excited than reality justifies sometimes. So this can be a good way to understand the roadmap for the company. You may not get an idea of what they're doing in the future, but you can get an idea of what they're focusing on as far as priorities, how often they deliver, what they deliver, and how often that what they deliver matches to what they're saying they're going to deliver. And those are the important things to get here. So this is a resource that doesn't really depend upon their spin or anything. In fact, it can use their spin against them. So the next thing that I want to talk about and that you should look at is security. And security is very, very important. We live in a world where ransomware is rampant, where there's all sorts of security leaks all the time. But the key thing is you've got to have really good security. This castle we're looking at looks very imposing, but it has a real problem with it. That problem is there's nobody on those walls. Security is only about the people on guard. Just like infrastructure is great and reliability and redundancy is awesome, but if you don't have the network operations team, you've got to have the security team who are standing guard, or else you have no security at all. Somebody can just climb those walls if nobody's looking over and shooting down at them. So what should you have in this? Well, first, they've got to have that dedicated security team. They've got to have the guards. They've got to be people whose only job is security. If they tell you, oh, we've got our network operations team and they do security as well, not there's a dedicated team that's part of the NOC team, but they do the same thing, that's not cutting the mustard. They need to have a dedicated security team. They ought to be able to tell you about at least the leadership of that team. That team should be real-time monitoring threats, proactively responding, having things they can do, and doing continuous planning on how they can prevent stuff. They've got to have procedures that allow them to quickly identify new threats, look at threats that are out there that other people have identified, look at behaviors they're seeing on their own systems. They've got to work closely with engineering to deliver updates and patches in a matter of days if it's a critical threat, not months or years. And customers need to be notified. That's part of that visibility piece of issues. This should be ongoing. They also need to have continuous penetration testing going on. They need to have a formal red team. Hopefully they have both an internal team and external contractors so they get the best of both worlds. But they at least need one of those who are constantly doing test runs against new software releases to identify vulnerabilities and let the security team know about their results so they're aware of what's happening. Also, they let engineering know so they can fix the vulnerabilities, obviously, but they need to be in constant communication with the security team. And you ought to be able to find out about what they're doing. Now, you may need to sign an NDA to get this information, but they ought to have published security docs that you can get to and see whether or not they're doing all the stuff I just talked about. This team should also handle certifications, which we'll talk about in just a moment. The reason why all of this is so important is you can't control security anymore, right? You've handed it off with a cloud solution. And they need to be providing, as part of their unified communication as a service, the service of keeping you secure. But your job is to critically evaluate the security they're providing and making sure that what they're offering really works. One other thing that you can look at is to ask for compliance certifications to help you with security. You can say, hey, look, I want to know about what certifications you have. Now, there's a lot of industry certifications to look for. Here's a lot of good ones. But there are also, like HIPAA, very industry-specific certifications. So you should talk with your own security team or vendor and know what kind of things are important. And then you can go and ask to see those very specific things. But don't just ask, hey, tell me, are you this? See if you can get the paperwork on this. Look for the actual certifications so you can go through and evaluate them critically. And this can provide a lot of great information on all of these kind of things. So this is stuff that really it's much harder to fake. You should be looking for these independent certification audits. Now, the last thing that I'm going to suggest you focus on when trying to make a choice, way beyond price and features, is you want to look at service. You're probably not going to end up being this guy with his feet up in the hammock, but you don't want to have to worry at all about your UCAS solution. You want to take your IT resources and point them at more high-value projects rather than having to maintain and administer the phone system and the video and collaboration and all that. That's part of what you're paying for a cloud solution for. So here's some of the service questions to ask about. You want to know about the training and experience of the team. How trained are they on the platform? What are their continuous ongoing training capabilities? What are they doing as far as experience? Are they constantly hiring new people where everybody's got less than a year of experience? Or do they average over 10 years of experience like the vertical team does? Are they going to be doing moves, adds, and changes for you? Or is that on you? Do you have to administer the daily system, or can you just send a ticket in and they'll go fix it? Do they provide remote support, but also on-site support if it's needed? What kind of support capabilities do they have? And very importantly, what does their escalation process look like? What happens when it all goes wrong? You should always be looking at what happens when it goes wrong. It's easy to talk about what happens when it goes right. What happens when everything goes to pieces? And then what kind of service level agreement do they provide for all of this to justify and guarantee it? So these are definitely some of those things that you should be asking. But one of the other things that you should be asking about is project management. Very big on project management here at Vertical. We've seen that project manager makes or breaks products. Classic statistic out there, 70% of organizations have suffered at least one failed major project in the last year. And we don't want yours to be one of them. So we really encourage you to look very closely at the project management capabilities. In fact, to the point that we will on occasion with deals bring the project manager that would work on your project into the sales call so you can go ahead and meet them and talk to them. Because we believe that the project managers are the heroes of the whole operation. They make sure that the whole thing comes off successfully. And to do that, they ought to be certified. The Project Management Institute, PMI, is where they should get their certification for. Look for things like PMP certified. We like to often have you meet the project managers for some of our great team. And you should get a standard copy of the project plan. This happens to be a very high level of the vertical project plan. And we give you a more detailed version, even in the sales process, to see what it might look like. We can talk through. But this is the stuff that makes or breaks not only the success of the initial implementation, but having these kind of capabilities is what makes it successful later on. Is it successful or not in a later project? So this is the stuff to look for, but I want to give you one more independent resource to look for, which is what's called Net Promoter Score. If you haven't heard of NPS before, this is really a survey question that people ask their customers, and they should be asking all their customers. How likely are you to recommend this company's product or service to a friend or colleague? That sort of sounds like a sales question, but if you really think about it, it's asking what your actual opinion of the total product and service is. Because if you're going to recommend it to mom or to your buddy Joe, or to a guy that you work with all the time, you're going to want to make sure it's the best possible product and the best possible service possible. And so that's the heart of this question. The NPS question can result in a cumulative score of between -100 to 100 for a customer. And so what's a good score? Well, that varies wildly by industry. Here's a chart showing a lot of different industries, what the median score is, what high range is. But there's a really common theme that you can figure out here. Pretty much anything above 60 is a really good score. And anybody who's got something above 60 is doing great. You'll notice that the highest range of most of these bottom out or top out before 60. They don't even get into 60. So if they've got a 60, it's very good. And if they're 70, they're world class. Virtually none of these industries have 70s. 70s are outliers. And I want to tell you this for one particular reason. I bet you know what's coming, which is Vertical's NPS score. Over the last 2 years, our average has been 72. We believe we're a world-class sales organization, and our customers agree. And I'm going to go ahead and brag a little more because this one really means a lot to us. In 2021, through the first 2 quarters, our NPS score is perfect. It's a 100. Nobody ever gets that. It's just impossible, and yet we're doing it. And that's because we do all the stuff that we say and tell you about that you should be looking for. We deliver a really great service experience. And that's probably the most important reason why you might want to work with Vertical. So I hope all of this has been really worthwhile. I hope that you've gotten some good information and you now feel better about making that cloud communication choice. I'd love to go ahead and see what people have to say and see what kind of information that people are looking at. So if you have questions about what we've talked about, if you have questions about any of these areas, please let me know right now. Don't see anything yet, but we'll give everybody a minute. While we're waiting on that, let me mention real quick again, bottom of the screen, you can click on the chat button here, and that will pop it up, and you can just type in your question over on the left-hand side. So go ahead and do that if you've got any questions at all, anything you want to know, or is there something that I didn't cover at all that you're wondering about as you're going through your process? Is there something that's uncertain that you'd like to know more about? Or is there, honestly, a future topic? Because we love to do these educational webinars. We have tons of them. Anything that we can talk to you about that will be useful to you. So go ahead, if you've got something, go ahead and type it in. I'm going to finish up here, but I will come back around to check to see if there are more questions. If you are still, have interest in learning more, you can get a hold of your existing vertical account manager if you're already working with us. If you don't have one, you can contact me at vmarketing@vertical.com. We'll get you talking with a vertical expert who can help you through this process and make the right decision on the right product as effectively as possible. This is what we do. This is how we deliver relationships that last 10, 20 years with our customers. And we want to help you out. So contact me today and we'll get you set up with somebody today who can help you out. That's no problem at all. And if you just want to do self-research still, you're not quite ready there, I would suggest you go to the vertical.com site and choose resources, and you can go to the Vertical Presents webinars and see some of the webinars I've been talking about. how to choose between cloud and premise. There's ones about security. There's ones about contact center. There's ones about reliability. And you can find all sorts of great webinars like this one recorded. You can also, if you prefer to read, there are a lot of blog articles that cover great topics as well. And so I would suggest this for additional resources and additional places to look. Still don't have any questions. Really quiet group today. Is everybody, multitasking? I'm sure you're doing emails while you're listening to me. Don't hesitate to come back. Like I said, you can reach me at vmarketing@vertical.com and send out your questions, send out follow-ups. We can get you hooked up with a vertical expert who can help you out. Really appreciate the time today. Thank you for sitting through all this. Hope it has been worthwhile to you. Hope it has been valuable to you. And if it isn't, or if there's something else you want to hear about, new topics, let us know. We want to know. Thanks a lot and have a good day.